You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
This week on the B&H Blog Explorer, we are going to be celebrating Wildlife Week. Of course, that's Wildlife Photography Week. And we encourage you to check out the many articles and photos on bird photography, shark photography, and safaris that are populating our site this week. For our part, we're going to be presenting select conversations recorded at Optic 2019, the outdoor and travel photo conference hosted by B&H and sponsored by Sony, Nikon, Godox, Canon, Fujifilm, and others. The set of photographers we welcome to the podcast this week are quite impressive, including Emmy Award winner Ron Magill, who moonlights as the communications director of the Miami-Dade Zoo. We're going to be joined by undersea specialist and founder of Meet the Ocean, Paul North. After a short break, we're also going to be joined by the Optic keynote speaker, National Geographic photographer Frans Lanting. But we're going to start off with Ron Magill. We are being joined by Ron Magill. Welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast.
Hey, it's a privilege and a pleasure to be here, man.
Now, my first question is, I heard you speak earlier today, okay?
Yeah.
What were you drinking before you went up on there? I never heard anybody with so much energy in my life.
I got to be honest with you. First of all, I've never tasted alcohol in my life, and I've never tasted coffee in my life.
Wow.
But I get to go to places in this world, and I get to observe wildlife in this world that is the greatest adrenaline rush you could ever imagine. And the greatest thing about photography is every time I show one of the images that I took, it reminds me of when I took it. You know, that's the great thing about photography. It brings you back to that moment, that instant in time when your adrenaline was rushing. Mm-hmm. My favorite saying in the world is this: life is not measured by the number of breaths that you take. It's measured by the number of times your breath is taken away. And those images, what they do is they represent those times when you kind of go, and you get your breath taken away. You know, I listen. All due respect to all the wedding photographers and fashion photographers and all those other, I'd freaking be suicidal if I was doing that stuff. Okay? I'd be suicidal.
What do you really think?
No, I'm serious. I would be suicidal. God bless those wedding photographers. They go out there all the time. They go out there, you know, and they're taking pictures of people for their wedding. And is it going to make me look fat? No, I don't want to take a picture with him. You know, animals don't ask me those questions. Okay? They don't worry about whether they're looking fat or not. Now, on the negative side, I can't tell them, hey, can you turn your head a little bit to the left, or can you switch here a little bit? I got to work with what I got. But at the end of the day, you get to capture those real moments. There's nothing fake about wildlife photography in its truest form.
Let me ask you though, that moment when your breath is being taken away and you're working, you're shooting at this time, okay?
Let me make something really clear. I've never worked a day in my life.
Okay.
Ever.
Then you're loving life,
Ever.
but you got your finger on the button and you're shooting. How does that kind of translate to the photography? I mean, all right, this moment is going to be a good photo because my breath was just taken away? Or could it be it could be a mundane shot that you're taking over the course of several hours that turns out to be the shot that you want to
I got to be honest with you. I think it's a little of both. Yeah. I think there are times you hit the shutter and you go, man, I know that's going to be a great shot.
Yeah.
You know, and there's times when you have this incredible action sequence and you're just holding the hammer down, man. It's just... Yeah. And you don't know what you got, but you're crossing your fingers.
Yeah.
You get back to camp, you start looking through your images, and you go, oh, that's nice. And then it's like, whoa, look at that one. Holy jeez, I never saw it. I can't believe that. Look at this guy. It's something you never saw. You know, there's an old saying in photography, if you saw it, you missed it.
You missed it.
Okay?
Yeah,
so all of a sudden, that's the great thing. And I tell people that all the time. I said, listen, I remember I was out there once shooting a sequence, and I just put the hammer down. I'm just like, and there's one guy next to me. You know, one of those guys... I want to get people really ticked off at me when I say this. But you know the guy who wears the photo vest, that's got a patch and a pin from every national park and every place in the world that he's been, and he's got about $80,000 worth of gear, and he sits up there and he's next to you, and you're going, and he shoots and he goes, click, and he looks at you and he goes, and he goes,
I know that guy.
When you're a real photographer,
right,
you'll hit the shutter at the precise moment instead of that spray and pray thing that you're doing. And I went, oh, excuse me. Dude, I've had enough of that pompous attitude where you can think you can predict the action of wildlife that in a split second you'll never see with your eye. But because the equipment is made the way it is today, it can capture those moments. Yeah. Don't be so freaking self-centered that you think you're better than your equipment. Yeah. Okay?
I was just expressing my opinion, that's all.
But how do you feel? I mean, you edit all your own work. I mean,
I edit
you
all
go
my
through
own
everything. And do you get that same or a version of that feeling when you're editing it?
I
when
do.
you see that shot
I do.
that you might have had when you're in the field?
I do. Listen, I'm not the brightest bulb in the chandelier, but a gift that God has given me is that I can look at an image that I took 20 years ago and I remember where I was. Sometimes I can remember what it smelled like when I took that image. That's just a gift that I've been given. And again, I haven't been given very many other gifts. I'm not very bright. But it's just this one connection with photography. And that's the thing about photography. I try to tell people, man, listen, we're so gifted now with digital photography. You know why? You know what the greatest invention in the world is? The delete button.
Yeah.
Because you can shoot away, and if it sucks, you get rid of it.
Yeah.
But don't stop shooting. You're not, you know, keep shooting, man. And the greatest teacher you have, in a way, really, is that LCD screen behind your camera. Because photography is subjective. No matter what you think. And I know that because when I started photography, I started by getting all the magazines, you know, Pop Photography, Shutterbug, all those magazines, and they have those little contests and stuff that went on. And I'd look at the contests and I'd look at the winners and I'd say, some of them would be, wow, that's fantastic. But then I'd look at some of them and go, well, that's not so good. I could do that. And if I could do that, it can't be that good. That's the way I'd look at it. If I can do it, it's not that good. Okay? So I started shooting pictures on my own. I started saying, let me start doing this and start doing that. But the bottom line is this. You know, there are going to be those people, and I know people get all caught up in these contests, you know, where you get critiqued. Well, it's not sharp in all corners, and you're not doing the rule of thirds here. You know, screw that. The first thing you got to worry about is whether the image makes an impact. What kind of emotional impact does your image make? If you show somebody an image, they look at it, they smile, they go, oh, it's a good image. Bam. I'm not saying it can't be made better,
right?
But that's a good image.
Made somebody react.
Yeah, you made somebody react. That's what photography is about, connecting to something that's going to create an emotional response.
But you came at photography, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, there's always maybe a greater purpose to your photography too, right? Because of the work you're coming from.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I'm a zoologist.
Yeah, you came to it with a purpose.
I came to it as a zoologist. I came into photography because I would write articles, conservation articles, to get them published in magazines. And I'd start submitting the articles and say, okay, we need some photographs to go with this article. If you want it published, I go, okay. So I'd call the stock agencies. And they told me how much the photographs were in stock. And I went, what? I'll go buy my own camera and I'll learn photography on my own. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I started photographing these animals on my own so that I could augment my articles and get them published.
Now, how long ago was this that you started doing this?
About 25 years ago.
Okay. So autofocus was already in and was already...
Oh, yeah. And that's why I say, you know, when I'm asked, it was such a huge privilege to kick off this conference, Optic, to be the first speaker up there. I felt like, you know, I'm not worthy. I'm really not worthy because I think about the masters. I think about those guys who manually focused, who could walk into an environment and say, you know what, this is 250 at f8 because their minds were meters. I can't do that. I've been spoiled by this technology that does all that work for me. Autofocus. When you look at these guys they were getting sharp pictures of falcons diving at them in 1960, you go, how did they do that? Yeah. How did they do that? With film, where you got 36, 38 exposures most, I shoot that in 3 seconds. I'm going, holy crap, how spoiled
Cameras
are we?
didn't work that fast back then either, though.
Exactly. And it's all, you know, even when you didn't have the motor, these guys are doing this by hand. Think about where we've come in photography. That has opened the doors for so many people. But at the same time, let's not forget those masters, man. Those are people who really knew what photography was.
Mm-hmm. Was there a moment when you realized, okay, this is not just, I'm not just taking the picture to save money on the stock or to illustrate an article, but I really love what I'm doing. I love this aspect of it. Can you kind of pinpoint that moment to some degree?
You know, it pinpointed the moment for me. I was working on a project with harpy eagles in Panama. And I was up in a nest with a harpy eagle for the first time. Wow. This is 100 feet up, a nest 6 feet wide, 3 feet deep. I'm sitting in the nest with the chick, the mother on a augmented branch on the outside.
Were you sitting in the nest?
In the nest. That's how big the nest is. Okay, I was in the nest with this bird. Jeez. And
how did you introduce yourself? I'm just curious to know.
Like you did this morning.
I remember. I put my camera on a self-timer and put it out on the limb to take a picture of me with a wide-angle lens of me in the nest with this bird. And I looked at that photograph and I said, oh my God, this is connecting what I'm doing here. And I showed that image to a school group when I got back home. And the kids went out and they did a marathon, a walking marathon to raise money for the harpy eagles because of what they saw in that image. And I realized what photography does, it's a conduit to inspire people to care, okay? The sad reality is most people will not get the opportunity to travel into the rainforests of the Amazon or into the savannas of Africa or to the islands of the Galapagos.
Or to that hill in Mexico to look at the butterflies.
Freaking butterflies, man. There's freaking 100 million butterflies in a tree. I can't tell you what that was like. You get up there and you go, This is nature. And these butterflies have flown thousands of miles, never been here before, and are in the same trees that their ancestors were in, never having been here before. How does a bug know how to do that? Okay, this is what's cool about nature photography. You go out there, you photograph, and you're learning and you're being open to the world. You never stop learning stuff about this. And as a photographer, I think it makes you a better zoologist, a better biologist. Why? Because you're really observing. You've got to observe. And vice versa. I think being a biologist, zoologist, in photography, you need to know your model. You need to know your subjects. And I think some of the best wildlife photographers are truly biologists and zoologists who have studied the behaviors of these animals, can anticipate a behavior. There's an old saying that says the only thing predictable about wild animals is they're unpredictable, but that's true to a point. There are certain things that you can tell by watching behaviors of animals, what they're going to do, what they're going to think, and you can be prepared. You can have your hand in that shutter release and get ready to go. I think
a lot of that must become, like you said, from observing, from the time spent with these animals. How can you translate that to somebody who is on a tour, who's kind of doing it for not even the first time, but they're not out there putting in the hours? Is there a way? Is it possible?
I would say that what you need to do is, first of all, understand behaviors of animals and understand that you want to be out there at sunrise and sunset. It's not only the magic hour for light.
It's when they're out.
It's when the animals are most active.
Yeah.
It's when you're going to see things going on, okay? It's getting ready to greet a new day as a diurnal animal or getting ready to become very active as a nocturnal animal. So these are things where you get to see the most behaviors. And the other thing I would suggest is, listen, when you find a good spot, you see a group of animals that you are interested in, just watch them for a while. I remember which is why I don't lead tours anymore, because I would lead a tour. I remember I was in the middle of 200 elephants in Tanzania, and these with babies and mothers, and everything's going all around us. And I had 4 very affluent people that asked me to take them to Africa, and I took them to Africa, and they were having the time of their lives. When these elephants, 10 minutes, they're like, choo, 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 choo. Okay, great. Where are we going now? I go, what?
Get that off the checklist.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It's like, okay, we've got the elephants off the checklist. So let's go find a leopard. It's just not about checking off an animal on a list. It's about what behaviors are you going to see. Okay, I remember staying around an elephant herd for about 4.5 hours because they were just being very active. A lot of things were going on. There was a lot of electricity in the herd. I'm thinking, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, 4.5 hours I've been sitting there photographing all the lights changing animals. You hear this screaming, and they're starting to trample around. A freaking elephant was giving birth. She was giving birth. It was one of the most electric, exciting times I've ever experienced in the wild. And I would have missed it if I left an hour after being there. But it's just waiting and see. You should never chase animals down. You should never, if you're on a safari in Africa, for instance, tell your driver, chase it down. If an animal is reacting to you, you're doing something wrong. The objective in good wildlife photography is to be invisible to the animal. So you're getting the true natural behavior of the animal. And sometimes it takes a lot of patience. But you know what? For me, I love it because I can sit at a water hole in Africa all day without anything exciting happening because I'm there. There's just something to say about that.
My takeaway after listening to you this morning was that you get there and it's like you just really miss machine gunning. You're taking zillions of pictures and editing it down. That's not the case because you actually do not just get there and take out your camera. You are absorbing
Absolutely.
and observing. And I know something that's come to me maybe later in life is that quite often I put my camera down because when I have a camera in front of my face, I'm no longer experiencing what's actually happening. And there are times I'll let a photograph go because I want to see this, but that's what you're actually doing to get to where you're photographing. And then you go nuts when it's happening.
Absolutely. Like, when I was photographing the monarchs, for instance, up in the mountains of Michoacan, I was photographing, I was like, oh, okay, I got some great pictures. And then I just laid down and I looked up and I go, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I'm soaking, I'm going, oh my God. It's just the trees 100 feet up and just a million butterflies flying over your head. And I hadn't looked at that perspective. I just sat there and I soaked it in. And then I just said, you know what? I took my camera and I just went, and I put it back down and I just watched it again.
Sometimes you just got to be there.
It's just being in that moment that's incredible. But at the same time, I did get my camera to get that so that I could remember when I laid there and just looked at it.
By the way, I don't know if you're aware of this, but a majority of the monarch butterflies that you showed today were female. I don't know if you ever noticed that.
I did notice that.
Yeah, a majority. I would say 8 out of 10 of the butterflies you showed today were female.
You could tell that from the photographs.
Yeah, those two little dots. You know what those dots are, don't you?
Those are the males.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay. And by the,
Man, I got a high resolution camera. Good.
I happen to personally connect with that whole monarch thing because early on with my own kids, we have actually had monarchs land in our yard and lay the eggs on a milkweed, and we watch them grow, and we bring them in, and they go into butterfly form.
Right.
And now my kids do it with their kids.
It's a
and
wonderful
it is the
thing.
most magical thing you could do. It's the most amazing 2 weeks.
Think about that transformation that happens there and how
It's
it fascinates kids.
And then that journey that they take is
Exactly.
phenomenal. It's like, it is insane.
It is
And
absolutely.
you had mentioned some good news from the past year in terms of the numbers. You want to talk
the numbers,
about those?
This past year, they had 100 million monarchs come into Michoacan, which is the highest numbers in 15 years. So that's a positive aspect. Now, there's a lot of things that have an influence on that. It's the weather. It's the wind. It's storms. It's the milkweed. It's the crops. It's
There's
the
so many
chemicals.
variables. If
There's so many
storms are
variables.
coming through, it blows them all over
Exactly.
the place.
Is it too early then to kind of point to some conservation efforts that have made a difference yet?
No,
or
I think it shows that conservation efforts have made a difference in the sense that they've been planting more trees in the places that were deforested. They've been planting trees. The trees are growing in. And also in the sense that milkweed, there's a huge campaign across the country. People planting milkweed.
We planted it on our deck.
It's
we do.
a great campaign because they're able to refuel themselves to make that type of migration. Now, on the flip side, the Western migration this year was the worst in over.
I imagine the
in over
fire
20
and everything else
fire
just
and drought.
devastated it.
Fire and drought. Now, the Western population west of the Rockies is only about 1 million monarchs. Migrating this year was only 13,000.
Wow.
So that's a huge plummet.
By the way,
numbers.
there are, I think, 3 sources of monarchs. From there's the West Coast, there is a Central and the East Coast, and they all kind of merge over Texas and then go south together.
Except the West Coast. The West Coast goes out to California. They go out to
okay.
Santa Barbara and the California area. But
They don't have. That's right. They don't have to transfer in Atlanta. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't.
So real quickly, I know you just got back from Antarctica.
I did.
And you also have a project in Botswana.
I got a project. I'm leaving to go to the Pantanal in
Oh,
Brazil.
okay.
We're going to be tracking
Wow.
jaguars,
Okay.
jaguars, giant anteaters, and giant otters in September.
Okay.
Looking forward to that. I'm
Wow.
going to be using some new equipment there and seeing how that works.
And how long is that trip going
That's
to
just
be?
a 2-week trip.
2-week trip.
2-week
Okay.
trip.
All
I
right.
don't usually go for longer than 2 weeks.
Okay. And what's the Antarctica trip or this project?
It was fantastic. We did a documentary for ABC on it where I brought a kid. I have a contest in South Florida. It's called the Eco Hero Contest, where a kid is rewarded for doing something wonderful for the environment. It's a contest. When the kid wins, I bring them to some incredible place in the world. I've taken kids to South Africa, to the Galapagos, to Machu Picchu. This year I brought them to Antarctica, and we did an hour documentary, and it was fantastic. Just killer whales going after humpback whales, leopard seals going after penguins, and the landscape. It's amazing to go to a place and you can look at it, and it's the way it could have been 1,000 years ago. That's what's incredible about Antarctica.
Well, and these are not, you don't photo at these times that you're taking pictures.
Oh, no, I'm
of time?
taking pictures like crazy.
Yeah,
Listen, I'm always taking pictures.
Why would I have ever doubted that?
By the way, for listeners that cannot take the time to run down to Mexico in February to photograph where all these monarchs come to, it's worth mentioning that I know here in the East Coast, from early September to early October is when the migration happens, and they
South.
tend to go along the coast. And I know we often go to along the Jersey Shore
Right.
around Sandy Hook.
That's right.
And if you hang out there for a day, you could see swarms of them coming by, and they stop and they roost, and you can go right up to them and take pictures, and it's part of their
Fantastic.
migration.
And to think those animals have got about another 15 to 1,800 miles ahead of them. That
It's
they're gonna fly.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
All right.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Guys, it's been a slice of heaven. Thanks for the
So
invitation.
if
Thank
people
you,
want
Ron.
to see your work, where should they go?
Oh, geez, my website's down. You can go. Nikon has me on their set as a Nikon ambassador. They have a page on.
Oh,
there.
that's okay. Nikon Ambassador. There you go.
Yeah.
That's important. Okay. And it's Ron Magill, Magill.
That's me,
All right.
guys. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure talking
Great
to
outfit,
you.
man.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. All right. Thanks, Ron.
Alrighty, we are back. Before we talk with Paul North, just a little special thank you to the sponsors of Optic 2019. That includes Sony, Nikon, Canon, Fuji, Godox, Lexar, Sigma, Panasonic, Olympus, Robus, Adobe, and Tamron. Thank you all. And of course, B&H is the official sponsor of this yearly show. What is it, the third year we're doing, I think?
Yep.
Yeah, and now we are being joined by Paul North, and Paul is the founder of Meet the Ocean and the host of an educational podcast of the same name. So you're dealing with ecological issues specifically to saltwater.
Yes.
Is that correct? Bring us up to speed on that.
Yeah, so Meet the Ocean is a nonprofit, and our podcast is our main educational outreach. So we're interviewing experts and ocean advocates of all ages to get the story, bring it to the public, and just sort of add to the conversation so people can know what's happening.
What's the seeds of this project? How did it all start?
Well, I've been diving in the polar regions for about 5 years now, and not only what I get to see, but who I get to share it with, it has been pretty dynamic, and I thought that there was a lot of value in that. Mm-hmm. So instead of letting all that stay out to sea, I figured I'd grab some microphones and make it happen.
So what have you seen in 5 years? I know there's supposed to be dramatic changes. Things are happening quicker than they were predicted on all of the model forecasts. So what have you seen in 5 years, which is not a lot of time?
It's not a lot of time. I would say the biggest changes that I've seen have been in Southeast Alaska, because we visit glaciers there.
Right.
And there you can actually have a visual of the receding glacier. But when I'm diving down in Antarctica, it's so immense, it's hard to get a visual about what is and is not changing.
Because the scale is so crazy.
It is, but when you get in the water, that's when you can start understanding how things go, because a good year for sea ice is a good year for krill. And basically everything in Antarctica eats krill. So that is a linchpin of the food chain. So good sea ice, good krill, bad sea ice, a low year for krill. So if the krill are having a bad year, then other species take over. They fill that niche. So if you're seeing a lot of these other species, specifically salps, these little gelatinous water pumpers, they compete with the food source with the krill. So if there's a whole lot of salps, then you know it's a bad year for krill. And if it's a bad year for krill, then Antarctica is suffering.
And that is sort of like the basic granola or the food chain up there, and everything else tumbles if that goes down.
Yeah, that would the term for that is a trophic cascade, when one piece gets removed.
And is that something you're noticing changing year to year, or is it generally the trend is down in terms of the amount of krill, or what's your experience?
It depends. You know, Antarctica is so large,
right?
And
so where you are, basically,
where we go is the peninsula. It's the easiest to access, and it is the most biodiverse place. So in doing so, we get sort of an all-access pass to the life down there. But in terms of the changes that you see, you know, one big change that's visible from the surface is the amount of snow. So you're a penguin, you're a young penguin with these fluffy, downy feathers. You haven't evolved to deal with snow, because snow will freeze and essentially turn you into an ice coat, which will hurt the juveniles almost to mortality, or mortality event, I should say. So even though I've only been down there a few years, and in both polar regions, there are changes, and you see them.
You do a lot of diving now. What kind of gear are you using? Because first of all, diving is a whole different animal than photographing above the water, and now you're dealing with cold water, very cold water.
Oh, yeah.
So what kind of gear are you using, and what kind of precautions do you have to take to make sure that everything is functioning?
So on the camera end of things, we have a pretty handy setup. It is a Sony RX100.
Okay.
Little handheld, but it takes amazing video. And when I screw on the macro lens, then the macro photography is amazing as well. So that goes inside a Nauticam housing, and then we have very bright LEDs. So that's what I'm using for the camera setup. I just actually got a new Olympus rig, which I'm pretty excited to keep testing out. On the dive gear end, you're wearing a dry suit. So that is essentially an enclosed air unit that you can put in a lot of wool layers to keep you warm. Mm-hmm. But you're also wearing dry gloves, which makes your dexterity to actually operate the camera equipment really hard. So those minute changes that a photographer always wants to make, I have to be a little bit more decisive about when I'm making those changes, because it takes some time. And you have to factor in, is your subject going to swim away while you're tinkering with your gear, right? But one of the safety things that we use, it's called an H valve, and it comes off the tank. And that way we actually have two regulators, because the water's so cold that one of your regulators that you're breathing in, because of the moisture in your mouth, it can actually freeze. And if it does so, then it just blasts air at you, and your tank can drain in 1 to 2 minutes.
That's not a good thing.
It's not, especially if you're like 70, 80 feet underwater.
Uh-huh.
So with the H valve, you're able to turn one of the free-flowing valves off and still have a safety one, but you're not staying down after that happens. If you have a free flow, you're headed to the surface.
Aside from this kind of air chaos in the cold, are there any other differences between shooting, say, 80 feet down up in the cold quarters, like in Alaska or Antarctica, or in a more tropical environment where the waters are warmer and stuff? Is there a difference in visibility, the light, and things of that sort?
Yeah, definitely. So polar regions are more nutrient dense, so there's more life. There's more particulate matter in the ocean. So
in the colder waters?
In the colder water, yeah.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah, cold water has more oxygen, and it also has a lot of upwelling, which is bringing deep ocean nutrients to the surface.
Uh-huh.
So that kicks off the food chain. But with that bioactivity, you're not getting a lot of clarity. That said, every once in a while, you'll get one of those days in the polar regions where you can just see forever. So it's a bit hit or miss, but sort of 360 type camera work underwater in Antarctica can be difficult because of the clarity. And a lot of what I choose to focus on is the up close macro, because I know I can get the good lighting. I know I can fully, capture the creature behaviorally in the way that I want to.
Now, when you say close up macro, what distances you're actually talking from the front of the lens to whatever you're photographing?
So we have an adapter that we screw on, which is to the 10th power. So you're getting very close, but in terms of like actual distance, probably 3 to 5 inches.
Okay, because you're dealing with animals that, depends on what their interaction with people. Could be real skittish, or they couldn't care less about you, I guess.
Yeah, I'm really good at filming the stuff that doesn't move that fast.
and how much physical dexterity do you need to kind of photograph that close at something that is moving and it's cold, or maybe you're not feeling the cold so much, but your time is limited, and is that something that you've had to practice physically and become more adept at over the years, or is it just getting there that is the hard part?
Well, getting there is definitely the hard part, but keep in mind what I'm filming. Very often I dive, film, edit, and present in the same day.
Really?
So it's lickety split, and I might be diving at 10 a.m. and presenting at 6 p.m. So when I'm under there trying to create a product that I'm going to deliver to an audience under those circumstances is very intimidating, or at least it was at first. But you sort of develop a rhythm, and you're like, okay, I would love to film that creature, but it's upside down on the rock. So I'm not going to waste my time trying to get that very difficult shot. I can probably find that creature if I keep swimming again. So you're more selective with what you do. And
you also have time limitations on you, though, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Severe ones. It's not like you're waiting for the light to get good.
No.
You don't have that option.
No. Often you're providing the light with your camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's dark, it's murky, it's the kind of cold that your brain starts to work against you. Like, you're questioning your life decisions. Why wasn't I a lawyer? Yeah. Those kind of things. But I enjoy the challenge. And when I do find that moment down there, it's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. Yeah, and from your talk, you'd come from the arts. I saw, and then you were a commercial fisherman for a while.
Yeah.
And can you kind of give us the arc a little bit? And I guess my question that will lead from that is, what's your take on photography itself? Is it a tool to say what you want to say, or have you kind of developed it more to feel like it's something that, in and of itself, you're interested in?
Good question. So the arc of my life.
Well, in a minute.
Cue up the music, Jay.
Indeed. I got my master's in creative writing.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But back then, did you have this experience of diving, or is this just
no? I didn't dive till I was 25, so it was later in life.
Right.
And because of that, I kind of jumped in head first, let us say. But after the degree, I had the student loans that I needed to pay, and I didn't want to. I went to Arizona State, so I didn't want to stay in the desert over the summer.
Diving is terrible there.
Yeah. So how do you get a job in Alaska? You don't tell them that you're from New York, like rule number one, because they have a specific opinion about New Yorkers.
I bet, yeah.
So I told a white lie. I said I could cook, and I got a job on a fishing boat.
Okay.
Did that for many years, and that just tuned me into the ocean in a totally new, random way. And from that, I started scientific research, volunteering on tall ships that were teaching kids how to basically study plankton out in the Pacific. And then that led me to National Geographic expeditions, where I basically said, I can dive and I can film.
And cook.
And kind of. I don't know if waffles count. From a photographic standpoint, I mean, imagery is undeniable. We are visual creatures. It's how we've evolved. I just heard something recently that I found fascinating. There's a correlation between mammals, specifically primates, that were located in areas that were reptile heavy, that their eyes were more adapted to see the reptiles than, mammals that weren't near snakes and stuff. So that sort of, how our eyes developed to pick out these details, I think that leads directly into our fascination with photography now. So what I'm trying to do with Meet the Ocean is catch people up to speed at not only what the ocean is, but the trouble that it's in. And I think the easiest way to do that is visually. And then, of course, I back that up with our podcast.
Okay. How often is your podcast come out?
It does change because I'm often away at sea for about 5 months a year, but we try and release at least 3 episodes a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and that's all over. That's Easter Island, that's Antarctica, or it could be, Montana. I ask everyone that I interview, when did you first meet the ocean? And, that might be, well, my mother took me when I was 2, but very often that story turns into, man, there I was, 20 years old, thought I knew what the ocean was, but then this happened.
Wow.
And you kind of get those really juicy stories.
Yeah, that's a great question because it can be taken many different ways and you can get that 2-year-old story or who knows what, right? Yeah, that's
exactly.
wonderful. Oh, that's great.
I don't know if we mentioned this up front, but you are also with Lindblad Expeditions and National Geographic Shooter.
Yeah, so on board, my role is undersea specialist, which I always have to explain what that means. But basically, I am there on our expedition vessels to record what is happening in the areas we visit underwater.
Ah, okay.
Wow.
Polar regions, a dive normally is regulated to about 45 minutes. And to be honest, I'm not going to argue for more time because by that point, I can't feel many of my appendages. So.
And the people that go on the expeditions, some of them have probably never dived before, and you guys are willing to go to let them get down and do some photography underwater, or no?
So, yes, but only in the tropics.
Gotcha.
You can imagine the logistical insurance nightmare about taking people diving in Antarctica.
Yeah, first timers. That's not a good mix. No.
And when you're doing it for your work, do you have a team that you're always with? I mean, you must have partners and
So on the diving end, you always have a buddy.
Yeah.
And that's important. Very often I'm leaning over filming a sea star with my macro lens, and I don't know that there's a 12-foot leopard seal behind me.
Yeah.
And my dive buddy lets me know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did you tell me that? I was fine. I was peaceful.
Yeah, right.
So now that's an interesting point because, how many people do you usually have on each of these groups? On the average, how many people are there?
Our ships range from 60 passengers to about 150.
Now, does that mean that you have to have also 60 to 150 dive buddies? How does that work? Or do you pair off divers? How does that work? Because that's a big safety issue.
No, so just to a bird's eye view, the guests are there for above water experiences, unless we're in the tropics.
Okay.
If we're in the tropics, then they're snorkeling, then they're diving.
Okay.
But when you're in the polar regions, they're just heading to shore or going out on a Zodiac cruise.
Gotcha. Okay. If people would like to catch up on the work that you're doing, what sites should they go to? Instagram, websites, what are they?
Yeah, both our Instagram and Twitter is at Meet the Ocean.
Okay.
No spaces. And our website is meettheocean.org.
Mm-hmm.
We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so always looking for some help on that end. But yeah, we have about 30 plus podcast episodes right now, and we've been downloaded in over 40 countries. So we're definitely getting the message out there, and super happy to be here with B&H to present today.
How would you define the message, of Meet the Ocean, and what is the goal?
The goal is to use storytelling as a platform to convince people that more conservation efforts need to be taken. I very much believe that we have evolved to take stories in much better than just rote facts. Our eyes roll in the back of the head if I just started listing things about the ocean off to you.
As soon as the spreadsheets come out, you're dead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're also, let's be honest, we all have things going on. We are a more impatient culture than those of the past. So I'm trying to spice things up, to make it entertaining, to make it comical when it's appropriate. but largely it's there to tell stories in a way that fills out the whole of the ocean. So if you can hear a story that's coming from the tropics and then all of a sudden you're in Chile and now you're in Denmark, that has a real value because it connects the dots of our planet. The ocean is not segmented. It's one flow. It might take 7 years for a piece of water to travel all around our world, but it's going to, and it's going to continue. So.
All right.
Wonderful.
Very good. Paul North, thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck on future journeys.
Thank you. Yeah, next up, Russia.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
When's that happening?
That's in August.
Okay.
And where? Where in Russia?
So we're leaving Nome, Alaska, and heading west. So we're going to go to Wrangel Island, which is well north of the Arctic Circle, and should be some pretty good diving.
Wow.
Cool beans.
Yeah. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Enjoy. Thank you, man.
Okay, good.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, #BHPhotoPodcast.
We are back. We've had many, many impressive photographers here, some legendary shooters, Albert Watson, and I can go on and on and on, Michael Kenna, Stephen Wilkes. Today we have somebody who is really impressive, Frans Lanting, and he is truly one of the great photographers of our time. He's shot everywhere from the Amazon to Antarctica. He's done amazing books, amazing shows. He's a knight in the Royal Order of the Golden Ark, and in 2018...
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't know anybody else who's, we have not, you are the first of that qualification. I want you to know.
Photographer, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
there you
yeah.
go. And also you were honored, I think last year, as the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, first Lifetime Achievement Award. Is that correct?
That's right.
Welcome to our show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
So
Pleasure to be here.
Would you define yourself as a wildlife photographer? If you
You
had
know,
to?
I've never been fond of labels. No matter what your subject is, you still have to deal with equipment. You have to go through all the technical processes to capture images, and these days in post, kind of to make them look right and assemble them.
And you have to
then
connect with your
apply them.
subject too.
Exactly. So I think the labels are kind of irrelevant. I work with animals a lot, but I look at animals the way other photographers look at people. I regard them as individuals, and you have to pay them respect. You have to appreciate their lives, and the more understanding you have and the more respect you convey, I think the better your images become.
I think that's really interesting that you talk about that. You are more than a wildlife photographer. You do amazing photographs of a lot of different genre. But I really was caught on your photographs of animals, your Eye to Eye project. And what struck me immediately is that you're photographing animals that are essentially predators that kill to survive, and that can be portrayed very savagely. Yet they are the most relaxed, easygoing portraits of animals that I've yet to see. You have big, fierce cats that are just looking at you and just sharing a moment almost. There's a very human quality to that. How do you do this?
Well, thank you for
30
saying.
seconds or less.
In 30 seconds or less, yeah, the
thanks for-
elevator speech.
Thanks for saying that, Alan, because that's what I strive for. The kind of dramatized encounters don't really reflect the way I feel about animals. If there's not a photographer or a filmmaker around, they lead their own lives. And rhinos are not particularly belligerent if you leave them alone. So why would you dramatize that in an image? So I like to let animals be. I like to show them within the environments that they're part of, and I'd like to show respect. And most of all, I like to convey a sense of kinship. And that is how I connect animals with the rest of the planet. And we are caught in between. Yesterday, during the keynote, I said, I like to connect the dots between animals, us, and the planet. We're all caught up together in this amazing process of a living planet.
What do you think the biggest obstacle for people outside of yourself and people working with animals to connect those dots? I mean, what stands in the way from understanding here's an animal that may be very different and you have no real contact with, and how it affects the rest of us and the planet in a bigger sense. Is that harder than it might seem to make these connections?
I think it's so easy for people to travel to exotic places these days. Everybody wants to go to Africa and to Antarctica. But
that's because there's no room left on Mount Everest. They have to go somewhere else.
Exactly. And most photographers get preciously little time on location, and then you start by remembering all the amazing images that you've seen that have taken photographers like myself months or years to come up with, and then you have to squeeze it all into 1 week or 2 weeks. So you end up with a lot of repetitive imagery, and it's not easy for photographers, including myself, to break through that, to establish something original. And I think that originality comes from spending time building up a relationship with your subject.
Yeah.
And if you're in a studio, if you're a portrait photographer, if you're really good at it, and you're gregarious and you can lure personality out of your subject, that can happen in a matter of 10, 15, 30 minutes if you're good at it. When it comes to animals, you have to give them time. You can't play tricks with them.
I was going to ask, time is the factor, but also this idea of preconceived notions. I imagine a lot of photographers who are going into this, they want to get that image of the snarling tiger, and don't you have to kind of eliminate that as much as possible?
Yeah, I think the burden that every photographer faces these days, no matter whether you're an amateur or a professional, is that we carry too many images around with us as part of our visual memory bank. And it is very difficult to put that all behind you and to be in the moment and to just focus on what is there. So you start basically from a disadvantage. You have the burden of the past within you. And it's not easy to break through that, including for myself when I go to a new place, when I tackle a new subject. So what I do is I do a lot of research, non-visual research. I work a lot with scientists. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of literature research. I study a lot of art history so that I can approach subjects from a different angle before I begin to think about visual translations.
And I get that, and that's all important stuff, but I'm still kind of puzzled how you manage to just take very casual, easy portraits of leopards, lions, and animals that would sooner have you for lunch than sit in front of you for a picture.
Well, I would dwell on that, on the danger that is embedded in working with big animals too much. If you pay attention to their body language, if you know their behavior, then you know what the parameters are, how close you can be, and what you should avoid doing. So that's, I think that's the least part of my concerns.
What's kind of funny is that with people, it's important when you're doing portraiture. It's the eye contact that's important. A lot of animals, you make eye contact, that's automatically considered a challenge. So, I mean, do you look through the camera? Because obviously you have to be careful about making contact with a lot of these animals.
Yes, but if you look at my work, including the images in the book Eye to Eye, because I published that a number of years ago as a Taschen book, you'll see that in the course of the book, I convey intimacy not just on the basis of close-ups of animals looking into my camera. I think you can also convey intimacy and authenticity within a wider context. And these days, I'm much more interested in letting animals recede into a background. And I think you can even convey intimacy when an animal is not looking at you, when you're applying an over-the-shoulder perspective, as if you're the observer sitting on the shoulder of the animal, looking at the same scene as the animal is looking at. It's an interesting narrative device. I think ultimately it is all about point of view. And I think many photographers get too excited about what they're seeing in front of them, and they don't pause, they don't reflect on what it is. when I teach courses in photography, we do that from our studio in Santa Cruz regularly. My methodology is to show people how you can cultivate a dialogue with yourself. What is it you're looking at? Why are you interested in something? And only if you can become clear about giving answers to yourself, that is when you have the basis for beginning to frame a photograph.
And how does that manifest itself in your work? And let me kind of divide that, one, in the preparation aspect of it, but also, why you're out there in the field. I mean, are you having this conversation with yourself and saying,
yeah.
you know what, I think that's not the shot for me. I'm going to have to work it again
All
and I'll
the
have to
time.
figure it out. And
of course, I get excited too. I mean, one thing that is wonderful about photography is that kinetic relationship when something happens and you're in the moment. It can be an orgasmic experience. But
we had Ron Magill on the show yesterday. We know about orgasmic experience.
Yeah, we needed a cigarette after he left.
So, but I think it's just as important to pull yourself out of the scene periodically and reflect on what it is you're seeing and what it is that excites you. Well, otherwise, you're just chasing the moment.
Yeah, but let's say, I don't know if most of the projects you're working on now are what you call self-assigned or assigned, but when you're deciding to take on a project, and your projects are bigger, longer, they're not just going a week to Africa to get some shots, are you thinking of that narrative ahead of time as you're doing your research, as you're looking at how you want to take it on?
Yeah,
you are.
For sure. And to refer to the other end of my presentation, Eye to Eye with Life, the Life Project, which is a holistic view of life on Earth, that took us 7 years. And we did a lot of research and we did a lot of reflecting on how we were building the narrative. Because it's a conceptual look at life through time. So, and we very deliberately chose the subjects and the locations for that. And that project isn't based on the big dangerous animals that you referred to. I became really fascinated by looking at smaller things, that were really important in the evolution of all life. And ultimately, we included ourselves in it as well, ourselves as human beings, because we're part of this whole story. And here at Optic, we're celebrating nature and outdoors photography. But for me, people are part of it. I'm not just avoiding the telephone poles and the fences around the protected areas, and I show our impacts on the natural world just as much as I celebrate the so-called beauty in nature. Beauty is only skin deep. Meaning comes from digging a little deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And have you seen, can you kind of recognize an evolution in your own work over the years that has gone maybe more toward the narrative and the bigger picture issues away from, let's say, getting a good shot of a leopard or...
I've always been interested in the storytelling. I started with an interest in nature and an empathy for animals, but I trained myself as a photographer and I began to do editorial work. And you can't be a good editorial photographer if you don't know how to tell stories and if you don't have a passion for sharing stories.
That's a big word right there, that last part. There has to be a passion involved.
Right, and that's become something that a lot of photographers are hungrier for now because capturing images has become so easy.
Oh, I know. You just pick up your phone and touch the screen and your picture's done.
Exactly. So what's the next challenge? And that is meaning.
Speaking about phones, what kind of cameras are you using for your work?
I use all kinds of cameras these days.
Okay.
I use black cameras, I use white cameras, I use big cameras and small cameras, wide lenses,
So in other words,
lenses.
you choose the tools for the project.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a toolbox.
Exactly. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
okay.
It's not a dichotomy anymore. And I think that's really healthy. When I look at all the amazing tools that are available here at the conference, it's just astonishing. It can be a bit confusing because you wait 6 months and then the next great thing comes out. So...
do you try to get the tools you're using to fit your work, quote unquote, or when you're using something that may be new to you or a different type of lens, will you then kind of run wild with it first a little bit and experiment?
Yeah, I experiment with new cameras, new lenses, new accessories. But I have a basic toolkit.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's not about the gear.
Yeah.
Although from time to time there's certain specific things that I can do.
It's a tool, it's a toolbox. Okay,
It's a toolbox.
If you need a Phillips screwdriver, you don't take a flathead.
Exactly.
That's really what it is.
Yeah, but it all
It's true.
comes
Yeah,
back.
I did research on that, John.
It all comes back to what are you trying to do visually, and what are you trying to tell?
Well, if you have that story or you have this idea that you know, or maybe you don't even know when you're hitting the field after you've done your research and you're ready to go, but when you're out there, let's say you're called by some incredibly beautiful image that really doesn't have to do with your story that you're trying to work through. Will you kind of go over there and take a look at that image and take that photo, or do you need to kind of keep your focus on the project and
Of
the
course.
series? Yeah.
I can be seduced very easily. Serendipity is a wonderful thing, right? Yeah, you can think things through, and you have your script, you have your storyboards, and then things happen that you never knew would be possible. So it's good to start off with a plan A, so that you know when you see something different that the opportunities are very different.
You
than
have to
what you
start with
imagine.
parameters, and then from
Exactly.
there you just see where it goes. But you have to have some framework to start with. Otherwise, you're just
Yeah.
all over.
And that is, the more experienced you become as a photographer, the more you can act intuitively. Some of my best friends are street photographers who supposedly are spontaneous and they're in the moment. But of course, greats like Bill Allard and Dave Harvey, they know what they're looking for. And they can see the elements come together, and when it all,
And they're ready when it happens.
or just before it happens.
Better point. Yes. Better point.
And do you see that in your own work? I mean, can you see things forming? And maybe
Yes.
as you're more experienced, they form a little slower and it gives you that time to get
Indeed.
that. Yeah, that's
So
wonderful. Yeah.
it's the way I think about it is it's good to know what the parameters are and what the elements are within which you insert yourself, and then ultimately serendipity takes over, whether it's light, whether it's a way a subject moves, or some other unforeseen thing that happens, and that is when an image comes alive. Because otherwise it just remains a pattern. It remains a still life.
Now, you obviously have a very deep, long relationship with photography. What got you started in the first place? What made you pick up a camera?
I've always been interested in pictures. They spoke to me from an early age.
Okay.
Long before I even had an inkling that I could become a photographer myself. I grew up in the Netherlands, and there were very few role models at the time. And there were no workshops, there were no publications dedicated to how to take pictures, how to become a photographer. So I had to figure things out
Figure
for
it out.
myself. I had to make my own mistakes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's nothing like your own mistakes. Those are the best.
So, one thing, I mean, at least in terms of the output of your work, you have, you can sell prints, you have books, you have your assignments. There's kind of different ways to receive feedback, let's put it that way, and the books are obviously in some ways a way to put the work that you most want out there. But what are you surprised by? What pieces, what photographs are, how they're responded to? Are there any images that are, let's say, for prints, when people want to buy a print, images that are always referred to or asked for or requested? And does that surprise you, or can you kind of say, all right, I know this image is going to be great for print sales, or this is going to be stock images, stuff like that? I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
There are. It's wonderful to produce an image and sign your name to it, and it's shipped off to a collector, and you know that that's an individual piece that ends up on the wall of somebody who will appreciate it over a long period of time.
and do those tend to be a kind of image? Can you kind of, I mean.
Yeah, there's certain images that people request over and over again, and we have a series of limited edition prints, and other images are available in open editions. And then we combine images into exhibitions and books that have more of a theme. But you know what? What gives me just as much satisfaction, since you referred to output, what happens is, when I think of all the people who I've touched, as a mentor and as a teacher, and they go on, and some of them I've known for years. And when I think of how they looked at the world and what their pictures looked like when they first showed them to me, and what they're doing now, I'm just as proud of that. So I think that's one of the things that makes photography today so different from the way it used to be. It used to be almost like a mysterious activity, literally like alchemy, right? There were a handful of practitioners, and we would hide in dark rooms, and you would mess around with stuff, and it would take months or years before anybody would see the end result. And these days, you can capture an image and you can share it immediately.
You could flip it in 30 seconds to the world.
Yeah, and it's much more of a sharing activity, and that is, I think, what makes creating photographs in the context of a workshop as a shared experience a very exciting process, because you can all go to the same place, and on the basis of shared principles, you go out and you do things, and a couple of hours later, you come back together and you look at each other's work in the course of an image review, which we do in our studio or on location. And then there's the wow factor. My gosh, I had no idea that you were looking at that and that you could do that. And I was there 10 feet away from you and I didn't see that.
And when you're out on a workshop, do you shoot as well, or do you kind of reserve that time just to be a teacher or someone for soundboard?
When people join us, I give myself and my time to them. It's I don't use workshops as a springboard to do my own photography. In order to do that, I want to be alone.
What's next? Do you have? Are you given someplace you're going to be going soon? Do you have a project that is coming out?
If people want to keep their finger on the pulse of what we're doing, I would say first of all check our Instagram, because I'm quite active there.
Is it your name, Frans Lanting? Okay.
And I like to tell substantive stories, so it's not just a picture here and a picture there. So do that. Of course, go to our website. Recently I've become quite engaged with a couple of campaigns. One focused on bonobos, a very rare ape in the Congo that's not doing too well.
Yeah, I saw some of your talk yesterday.
A very rare creature in Iran, the Asiatic cheetah. The Asiatic cheetah is at the brink of extinction, and because of the geopolitical issues between Iran and the rest of the world, my friends have gotten embroiled, and it's a tragic situation. So I'm very active in an activist sense as well as an artist. Mm-hmm.
And how often is the political and economic issues behind the scenes kind of paramount in terms of handling these conservation issues? I mean, when you're hearing about issues regarding poaching of animals, or you find it in zones where there is conflict or where there is lack of the stability of a government.
Look, the conflicts are everywhere, John. It's we're overwhelming the planet. Let's be candid about it. Mm-hmm. There's too many of us and fewer of them. If we divide the planet between humans and other creatures, and it's no secret anymore that our planet is having a fever. It's warming up, and we're passing on a big mess to the next generation. So, and I've been documenting that process of environmental change for decades. My background is as an environmental economist. So I started focusing on those things before I became a professional photographer. So it's always there in my images and in my projects. So sometimes I celebrate, sometimes I focus on things that really deserve action.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you guys.
And if people want to see your work, your Instagram is?
At Frans Lanting.
Okay.
Yep.
And your website?
Lanting.com. And what else can I tell people. We have an
Creative
exhibition.
Creative Live courses?
The Creative Live courses,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I've done a series of courses with Creative Live, one on landscape photography, most recently one on bird photography.
Oh, yeah.
And if people can't join me physically in Santa Cruz, that's a good way to get a little closer to me. And you can experience the way I think and the way I see. And I hope you'll all become better photographers and more passionate and more original.
There you go. That's it. Okay.
Constantly.
Frans Lanting, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Terrific work. Great talking with you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much.
All right. And so goes another great episode of the B&H Photography Podcast. If you are not a subscriber to the B&H Photography Podcast, we won't shame you. But you can go over to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, and Spotify. And you can always find us on the B&H Explorer website, as well as the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And don't forget to tell them that Al sent you. For now, on behalf of Jason, John, and myself, thank you so much for joining us today.